What's up, everyone? This is Jared Harris, and you're listening to episode 36 of Beats by Jer. Today, I am excited to be joined by an icon among the Canadian independent music community, Skye Wallace. Hot off the release of her fifth full-length studio album, The Act of Living, Skye made her official debut with 2014's Living Parts. Since then, she has released Something Wicked, Skye Wallace, and Terribly Good, all either independent or in conjunction with an independent label. Over the years, Skye has shared the stage with the likes of Tori Amos, Crownlands, Laura Jane Grace, and Alanis Morissette, and has toured across Canada, Europe, and America. Her music has cracked the top 40 alt-rock Canadian charts, and she was 2024's Her Award recipient. All of this is to say that Skye Wallace is one of the most compelling and exciting artists and songwriters of our time. The Act of Living marks the latest evolution in Skye's artistry and was co-produced alongside Hawksley Workman and was released via Tiny Kingdom. Here's my conversation with Skye Wallace. Hey Skye, thanks for joining me today on Beats by Jer.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's so good to be
Yeah,
here.
absolutely. Looking forward to this. So congrats on the release of your fifth album.
Thank
Pause for
you.
like the big wow there, like fifth album.
Wow.
Like that's a big feat in itself, but congrats on The Act
Uh,
of Living. It's such a cool record.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been lots of records, but yeah, this one was such a fun. It felt like a culmination of everything up until this point that I've done.
It's so unique, but it's
Thank you.
so distinctly you as well.
Cool. I mean, that's kind of what I was. That's what I was chasing before this record was in existence at all. It was kind of like I was in this place in the music industry of just feeling like, like you said, I have been doing it for a long time and just feeling like, where do I fit? Do I need to keep always thinking about where I'm going to fit, or like how do I do something that's just so entirely me? And I feel like this was like the process of it all, the release of it, and like even the playing of the songs like over the year and a half live has been like just that. So I'm really proud to put it out in the world. It's nice.
Yeah, it's such a fantastic record.
Thank you.
Before we discuss The Act of Living, let's talk about the road that has led you to this point.
Yeah.
You're five full-length albums deep into your career. You've worked with independent labels. You've been independent. You continue to be independent.
Hmm.
And, five albums is more than most people ever get to release.
Totally.
Let's talk about like what you've done, some of your achievements, your past work. What has led to The Act of Living as it is this culmination, as you're saying?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I started very folky, and that was just, like what interested me at the time, what was available to me at the time too. It was like I knew how to play acoustic guitar somewhat, and I liked to tell these stories and things. So technically, five albums are the albums that I have out on the internet, but I do have two other full lengths and an EP that I
Oh,
have taken down because they just don't quite align with the project as it is right now, but was something that I did like when I was quite a bit younger. So it started when I was like 19, I hit the road and had an EP, and that was my
when was
first thing
this?
like 2009 or
Okay, yeah,
something.
so like well over
Yeah.
a decade ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like 35 now, so it's like, yeah, it's been a minute. So it's like it's definitely been like I it's so funny listening back to some of those early ones, especially like technically the first full length that I put out was this collection of things that I had produced myself in GarageBand, and it sounded awful, but I'm so proud of it listening back to it now. When it's like you don't know what you're doing, so you make the craziest decisions, and it's kind of like
Mm.
risky and fun for
Are we
that
talking
reason.
like songwriting or production decisions?
Both, like
Okay, yeah.
all, like I'd say the entire thing. There, yeah. So it was like this EP that came out was called Amuse Bouche when I was 19. Then it was called then this so like the like experimental one called Bison Bison, and then I did just like more. I was just it was more of like a it was kind of like workshopping or building what this sound was that I wanted to get at. And so I started kind of falling into kind of the what I see as like the rails of like what my songwriting has become and what like the live show has like the arc of the live show over the past years. That was kind
Mm,
of where it started, was around 2015. I had this record called Living Parts. And that was kind of, I started like really giving her as far as this career path. So from that, like it did start very like Living Parts was, had many configurations, lots of like drums and like strings and lots of different components, but it was very raw in a cool way. And there was something about that specifically that I wanted to bring back into this as kind of this like full circle moment of like of that rawness and of those experiments that I talked about with earlier stuff where like you're making all of these risky choices because you don't know what's right and what's wrong. And now having a little bit more under my belt, but still, not having the skills to say that I'm a pretty fresh producer as far as producing my own stuff. So it was bringing this kind of like just like fresh eyes to creating and making that I wanted to, just kind of throw caution to the wind and make something that felt very textural and very like
mm,
reactive, and like I could feel it in my gut making it all
yeah,
along the way. So
yeah.
I think that's what I meant, where there's just like all these like I want those imperfections and I want those moments of grit and vulnerability and rawness, even if they're not perfect, because that to me is like where the lightning in a bottle can happen.
That's
So
so interesting. I was actually talking to Scott Holiday from Rival Sons earlier today,
cool.
and he was like, "Yeah, you're like they're putting out a live record," and he was talking about bumps and bruises, and there's no right way to make a record, and to
Mm-hmm.
some people, the polished album that is perfect, technically flawless, is the right way. And for some
Yep.
people to include those raw edges, that vulnerability, that like sacrificing what would technically, air quotes, right, but be perfect
Mm-hmm.
for something that you think is more, authentic. Not that the other way is less authentic to
Totally.
others, right? It's so interesting.
Yeah.
Um, where do you think imperfections and grit fall into the creative process for you?
Hmm. I think they've been quite a companion for me as far as like writing. I feel as though, and it's maybe something I just boiled down to like something my mom said when I was younger and just getting started in songwriting, but I kind of feel as though the song has a life of its own. It kind of has its own personality. And
Mm,
I like, even, whether it's instinct or it's the song pulling me, I like being pulled in different directions that I won't like. I don't necessarily need to foresee how everything's going to go the moment I set pen to paper. So
hmm
for me, I like those moments, those little, happy accidents and things like that, because it can turn it into something completely different. So I think having that openness to things like shifting and changing based on, things not falling exactly how I expect them to is kind of I've come to really cherish that part of writing. I think it's really interesting, especially like you're saying, like, it's and polish is friggin' awesome
Yeah.
as a separate thing, but just like in the world of AI, it is interesting to see that, like, like these little imperfections of like, so, like they're so human. So like that's
Yeah.
something that interests me as well, as just like, I'm uh I don't know. I'm gonna happy to explore the space and the
Cool. Yeah. I like that a lot. It feels very
yeah.
authentic too, especially with this record.
Yeah, totally. This one was so personal too. Like all the stories were so deeply, yeah, just very vulnerable for me specifically, and for the process that I was taking, like for my own relationship with death throughout the record's fruition. Like it was
Mm.
very much a bear all kind of situation. So it made sense to have those little, the little. There's a few songs we left the demo
Yeah.
vocals in, kind of thing,
Oh,
like
wow. That's
things like
cool.
that, where it's like there's just something so brittle about this moment that we just decided we couldn't replicate it. It was just so like
Wow.
of its moment.
That's so unique.
Yeah.
Before we get more into the album, I am so curious because you said you've taken these
Yeah.
first two albums off the internet.
Yeah.
And they're dangerous, they're different. You're taking all
Yeah.
those risks you do when you're super young. Um, have you ever thought about revisiting that work and I don't want to say repurposing because that's not, I don't think that's a good word for it, but like revisiting it and re-recording it as was, or maybe revising it to fit where you're at now, but like where it's
Yeah.
like removed and it was so fresh, but you have such an affinity for it.
Yeah, honestly, yes, that's been something I've been thinking about a lot. And I just uncovered a whole bunch of recordings that I did when I was like 2021. I was living in Edmonton for like a very short while, and I had access to a recording studio at the U of A. So I was just going in there and recording things for no reason, and I didn't know how to use anything, and I was
Mm.
just kind of, let's see what happens, kind of deal. And like I just found them in my Dropbox, like in the depths of my Dropbox recently. And so I've been listening to them and I was like, you know what? Like, because this record is my first like co-production like
Hmm.
title on my own work. And I've just always been so afraid to like to go there as far as,
Yeah.
my own skill set and whatever. But it was kind of nice to be like, oh, I've been doing this for so long. Like
Yeah.
I was doing it even when I didn't know or acknowledge that I was doing it. So that was pretty cool. And to like maybe see those songs after all of this, like this road that I've been on, and having the skills that I have now, and to revisit it with an eye that's kind of aligned, because I feel like I have that like willingness to kind of experiment and have like, I don't know, just like the bits and bobs still within the piece. I think that that could really be a good moment to revisit them, and maybe even, yeah, like reframe, like put
Yeah.
them into, I don't know, in conjunction with the rest of the live show and things that I'm doing. Like I'm very interested in that.
Yeah. No, that sounds really awesome. I mean, having not heard those pieces, that to me just sounds like an interesting experiment,
Oh, for sure.
you
Also
know?
dangerous is a good
But that's like the best experiments are, right?
for sure.
Uh,
Absolutely. There's stakes.
yeah. Uh, I mean, again, like when things don't work out though, right? It goes back to that idea of just like having those raw edges and maybe it wasn't the most successful, but you could still
Yeah,
make something really cool out of that.
absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's compelling.
Yeah. Let's start with the act of living. Tell me
Yeah.
about the writing and the recording.
Of the entire thing, right? Like
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
the
yeah, the
album.
album, not the song.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
We'll hone in on some songs a bit later, but yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's like the album as a
Awesome.
whole.
Well, I would say the very first song that was written from it was this song called "On Your Way," and it was a song that my friend Matt May sent me, like this synth, just like an instrumental, kind of being like, we were writing at the time back and forth, and like he's like, "Do you see anything on top of this?" And I had just lost my grandfather at the time,
Oh,
and
I'm
he and I
very
were
sorry
really
to hear that.
close. Oh, thank you. But we were really close, and I was actually there with him when he passed, and it was this like very just impactful moment for me, because I've always had a very like kind of avoidant relationship with death. Like I've been very scared. I've held a lot of fear for
Mm,
death in my life, as many of us have. Of course, it's like,
yeah,
in North American society, it's not often talked about or even looked
yeah,
at. Like we're not encouraged to look it in the eye.
yeah.
And so this
It's
was a
the great
moment.
unknown.
Exactly, which makes
Yeah,
it scarier
yeah.
in my opinion, because then I got to see this death up close with someone I really, really loved. And it was this like, not all deaths are, but it was a gift to have this beautiful kind of tender experience with it.
Mm,
And
hmm.
so to be able to look it in the eye a little bit clearer, and moving through that song specifically was moving through my grief. And then from there, all these little other kind of similarities just through the theme in the song started happening. Like I wrote a song in like a cabin in the middle of the woods, and right as my meds kicked in for anxiety, and so I wrote this song that was like the death of anxiety uh, in me. And then from there, I was writing with Hawksley Workman. We were writing all these songs about like transitions and rebirth, and like death of fear actually came up, and I was just like, okay, there's something here. So I finished the record in a cottage hospital in Western Newfoundland, where there's like a lot of stories around death. And I've been previously like a couple times, and it just became this piece. And throughout, like I said before, like it was kind of also my processing and my relationship with death evolving, so that I guess like my intention with it is to like make people feel. That's always my thing, is to like make people feel something.
Mm.
And but also like my why, as far as why I like create music and why I play music for people, is like I want people to be touched by music in the same way that I am, because like I'm very like I move through a lot of things using music, and I'm very attached to them emotionally, to songs and to music. And so to make people feel what I'm feeling has kind of always been a through line. And so with this record, this reckoning with death and fear, more than anything, it's a reckoning with fear, because that's, I think, like that's the killer, right? That's the mind killer. That's the thing that can get in so many of our way. Um, and so to maybe bring that conversation forward was also something that I wanted to do in like the birth, if you will, of this record. So it kind of became a cool conversation, and each song kind of had their own version of what death could mean, and like how death is just moving life ever forward and it's always present.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Huh.
the the long and short, I guess. It was a bit long.
Yeah. No, I like it though. I like it. When you sit down to write, is it typically music first or lyrics first?
I think they come quite like similar timing, as far
Yeah.
as like they come together sometimes, but I would say that it's, for me, often music and syntax kind of come together. And like
Mm.
I music, syntax, and meaning, because I kind of want, like I can get the meaning sort of in its spot, but then like the syntax is really important to me, like the, like the yesterday scrambled eggs thing, like the Beatles
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
thing. But I think like that rhythmic element of the lyrics is really important to me. And then from there I can kind of like, it's like a puzzle. I love fitting it in the way that
Mhm.
works best with what you had in mind, with according to what it is that you want to convey. So I think for me it's actually like lyrics come pretty quick, but I do think that they're a secondary to the melody and an overall vibe and syntax.
Interesting. You mentioned Huxley Workman.
Yeah.
So you co-produced the album. This is your first time as a co-producer of your own work, which is super
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. It's,
So you worked with him from like the get-go, it sounds like. This wasn't like you brought a
yeah.
bunch of songs already completed, but like you were already connected with him.
Yeah, it was kind of arbitrary, actually. Like he just reached out because he was like, "Hey, I feel like we have mutuals and we could write together and that would be fun." And I was just,
Cool.
it was awesome. I was like, "Yes, let me
Yeah.
check my schedule." Like previously, revering him. And
hmm
currently, like
hmm
now we're buds, but like, it was quite a big deal for me to be like, "Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, I'll go write with Huxley Workman at his
Yeah.
house."
Yeah.
Like I was kind of
He's
losing
such
it.
a fantastic songwriter. He's a super nice guy.
So nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And an
Yeah.
amazing producer too. Like I remember like he did Hey Rosetta Into Your Lungs.
Mm.
That record was like huge for me when I was a kid. So it was just like it was a great moment, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll write some songs. This will be really fun and exciting. We write the first one and we're like, ooh, that's good. Let's do it again. And we write another one. We wrote, I think, 4 songs. Like there's Momentum, uh Tough Kid, What Is Real, and Active Living, that we wrote in succession, that all ended up on the record.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so it just kind of became this, like we tapped into this like magic something, like we both felt like it was something that we both really really felt compelled to pursue. And when I did go and like kind of finish the concept and like the whole, like the piece as a whole with the other songs, I went to him and was like, would you produce this? And he was like, I'm scared to because I don't want to get in the way of your vision here, because it's
hmm
so profound and it's got its soul already, kind of thing. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, what if we co-produce it? And he was like very amenable to that. And for me, like, what a huge, like, taking under the wing of a huge,
Yeah.
monumental person in the industry. Like it's pretty cool to have my first experience be so, and he was so like giving with just like sharing ideas and listening and like teaching. Like I did a bunch of the engineering while he did the drums on the record. Like
Oh,
it was
cool.
just, we both
Yeah.
kind of switched off, and it was very casual, but we both just like knew what we wanted and
hmm
just got down to it. So it wasn't like, nothing dragged. It was just kind of like boom 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 boom. and then we had it and it felt so good.
It
It's
sounds
crazy.
like an amazing artistic experience, but also an amazing like educational mentor type
Oh,
experience. Like to
totally.
have your first round of co-production be with someone that really knows what they're doing and is so open to sharing that must have been
Totally.
exceptional.
So huge because I think and like I said, I'm still fledgling. I've so much to learn, as we always ever learning, but I think I'm
Hmm.
still a very fledgling producer and still working on it. But there's even like I've done the courses and done like lots of different like things here and there, but there really is nothing like putting it into practice and like getting on your feet in the studio. Like there's nothing quite like that. So it was a huge gift for me, just like getting over the fear of like not knowing certain language or asking questions, or like it was a very like safe space situation.
Yeah.
So I feel
I
very grateful.
I've never met him. I spoke to him on the phone for like 2 minutes once.
Nice.
Because I was supposed to speak to, I want to say it was Wade McNeil from Alexis on Fire. I was supposed to interview
Oh,
him for the Spill magazine, and the PR agent gave me the wrong phone number.
oh
And
fun.
yeah, and I like gave them a call, and Huxley picks up. I'm like, "Hey, Wade," and he's like, "No." And I'm like, "What do you
No.
what do you mean?" And we had a good laugh about that. He was really like, like
Oh my God.
he was like a nice guy about it, like, "Oh, these things happen, ha ha ha." And like, we laughed. He wished me on my way, but
That's
every now and then
so
that
funny.
story pops into my mind, and it's just yeah, he just strikes me as such a nice guy.
Yeah, yeah, he is such a nice guy. That's so funny. You're like, is this
Yeah.
Wade from Lexus? I know it's Huxley Workman.
Yeah, I was like, "Whoa, what?" I was like, "I'm scheduled to talk to Wade McNeil, but I could talk to you right now."
Yeah, what are you doing right now? Good get.
Uh, yeah, yeah. Um, but no, that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. And
Um,
he's a rad dude.
yeah, I bet. I bet. So you've talked a little bit about the lyrical and
Mhm. Yeah,
thematic elements of the
fun
album.
version.
Um, from the very beginning, was that always kind of the intention to explore life and death throughout like most of the record, or was that just kind of like you were writing these things and like that's where it was falling into place and you kind of look back and you were like, oh, I have this body of work that's all thematically fitting.
I think it was kind of like right around that time when Hawk and I started writing those songs in succession, and there was kind of this theme for me. That's when I started like really pursuing it, I guess, as a more intentional thing. I did know that like I wanted to have some form of like concept record status. Like
Mm-hmm.
I did wanted to have, because I mean the last record I did was over the pandemic and it was so piecemeal for that reason, and many just like it was very all these different pieces, and I wanted to have just like a like for my own artistic stuff and just like writing and all that, I just wanted to have like a real like nice focus, a satisfying focus on this one thematically and whatever else that might mean. I didn't know exactly what that would look like, but I know I
Mm.
wanted to kind of dig and do something like that, because that's something that I've done in the past, where like I've done like a collection of songs that are all tied together by this thing or whatever, and I just think it's it's good on as far as like a creation standpoint, but it's also like fun to talk about. Like the stories of each of the songs are like, that's been the best experience that I've had with like promoting an album or like making contents. Like I've got to like really engage with this stuff, and want to talk about it all, and I
Of
want
course,
to
yeah.
like dig in and find new things to talk about all the time. So I think in that respect, like I wanted to have kind of like a something that made more of like a piece, like a project unto itself, that was like
Mm.
potentially multimedia, a bit theatrical maybe, but definitely like all part of this one whole.
Yeah,
Felt
totally.
like
Yeah.
where I wanted to go. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a great way to transition to the musical aspect because you
Mhm.
have this very strong lyrical theme that runs throughout the record. But I think musically, like this record it's a big stylistic shift for you.
Yeah, for sure.
And that is a very cohesive focus onto its own that kind of runs parallel to the lyrics. There's a lot of live instrumentation along with electronic textures, a lot of that coldness that
Mhm.
comes with synths, along with the warmth of acoustic instruments. Um, similar to what we were just talking about, was this like a conscious decision from the get-go to present these themes in such a stylistic departure, or was that more of something that kind of came about in this, like how did you come to that?
I think the stylistic departure was born of like my voice has always been my primary instrument, and I've
Mm,
shied away from it in more recent years, just in pursuing the rock sound. It's like you can only have so much focus on the vocal at like a live show when the PA system can't keep up with the drums. You know what I mean? Like the songs that I
okay,
was
yeah.
writing was very they were very much more fitted to like like the like sweaty dive bars that we were playing on like German tours, and like I don't know, just like the more rough and tumble kind of rock stages that I was playing with my band. And so for this one, I did want to like kind of strip things away. I've been thinking about this a lot recently. I'm like, sometimes I love rocking out so
Mm,
hard. I love it. But sometimes I wonder if I shy away from letting the pieces be heard and vulnerable. Like sometimes in my youth when I was playing acoustic guitar, I think I like started getting louder and louder so that I could like break through over the people talking at the like random bars that I was playing when I was first
okay,
coming
yeah,
up. There's an
yeah,
element of that, right? Where I'm just like, well, it's undeniable, like you have to listen to this
yeah.
kind of
I'm
thing. So
here,
there's,
I am
yeah,
on stage, I have
listen
the
up.
guitar. Yeah.
Totally. So I think that there was a real, it was kind of like a dare to myself to be like, no, strip it back, like try some other things, like do like have the vocals be so like interestingly textured throughout, which is something I've always wanted to lean into, and like using my voice as more of an instrument because like I started with a lot of, training and stuff like that, so I can pull off some cool stuff. And yeah, like it was just it was like I said before, like wanting to pull in all of the aspects that I had kind of learned along the way, but didn't wasn't able to put into practice all at once. So it was
Mm,
kind of like this
hmm.
moment of like, yeah, like all of these pieces that I'd wanted to have. It was just no holds barred. Like, you want to do that? Let's do that. Let's like make it the most satisfying exploration experience possible.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so profound.
Yeah.
Um, where in that journey did you land on the, like, again, I don't want to say it's like an electronic record because it's not an
Hmm.
electronic record, but like there's a lot of that,
There's elements. Yeah, for
right?
sure.
And there's a lot less of like the rock of the last record and a lot less of like the folkiness of the record before that.
Yeah.
Um, where how did you land on that particular pathway that you chose?
Uh I think there were elements of like what Hawksley brought to the table. Like he had a couple of like, well, he had just like access to just synth lines, and we were writing in that way. So that was one
Mm,
thing that happened as far as like the songs that we wrote on worked on together. And then the other thing is I brought like, and it's not like I don't have great gear by any means, but I brought this little mini MIDI keyboard to the cottage hospital in Newfoundland, and I just started writing on that because it was something I hadn't done before, and it was something I'd wanted to do. And I actually wrote a couple of songs from the record out there just on this keyboard, and it kind of like built the songs around the synth lines and like the synth riffs instead of the guitar riffs or whatever. So it was kind of like a departure for myself, as well as like bringing in new collaborators who were also kind of interested in that. And I think I think for me, I really trusted that direction. It just kind of kept coming up, and I was like, "Yep, this
mm,
is good. This feels right." Especially because there's lots of singers from specifically from an era when synthy like the 80s
yeah.
kind of rock vibes that I look up to, um like Dolores O'Riordan from the Cranberries, and like Sinead O'Connor, like these voices that were from like kind of like a similar background to my own and
Kind of
sound
folky,
similar to
kind of
mine.
rocky, but
Yeah, but
made
there's
that
this,
shift. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. There's this like wailing like kind of timbre that we have that is probably we're from a similar kind of area. Like my family's all like Irish and Scottish, so like there is something to that I wanted to tap in. Also, part of why I went to Newfoundland is like, the music of, my grandfather's from there, and that has really not maybe not influenced the sound, but definitely influenced the process for me. So getting close to that and just like, yeah, just taking it all in. So I think that was just like, it was a realm that made the most sense. It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Can I ask, what when you went to Newfoundland, was that after your grandfather had passed?
It was, yeah. And so
So,
that was very poignant as well.
like, this was an attempt to find that sort of connection
Yeah, it
with
was
like
actually
the
intentional at
roots
the
and
time.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because
Do you,
it just felt like the right thing to do. Like when Hawk and I were talking,
yeah,
we're like, the record's not finished. Like, what's next? This seems like I'm
yeah.
being pulled to do this thing.
Did
Whatever that
that
means.
like how important do you think the setting and the not just the physical setting, but the emotional setting of going to Newfoundland at this time, how important do you think that was for the final outcome of the record?
I think extremely. Like I think that was where a lot of processing got done. And I think um it was kind of where like I very much was open to, feeling things from my grandfather the whole
Mm,
time. Well, I don't know what I believe as far as like, I don't know, ghosts and things. Like I love a ghost story and things like that. But I don't know. I like to I like to spend time with like the spirits of people that have passed on who I've loved. Like whether it's like a meditation or something like that. But like I do feel like going to place was really, really important for me, especially where I was in my journey and looking back on not just looking back on my relationship with death, but like who I've been musically and also as a
mm,
person, like my whole life. I think it really allowed me to do that in a very visceral way because it's like this is kind of like directly to the roots. And even though it wasn't in the exact same place that my family was from, it was just like, yeah, it felt a bit like home. And like I moved around a lot quite a bit as a kid, so I haven't had that home thing. So I think having that be a part of it was just like it just made the whole thing clear. Yeah.
good. I'm that's nice to hear.
Yeah. It's a cool place
Um,
too.
it's so beautiful.
Oh my God.
I haven't spent much time in Western Newfoundland, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, it's so cool. The place I stayed at used to be a cottage hospital until like 2001. And
okay. I've
now
been afraid
it's,
to ask because
yeah,
you've
no,
said it a
ask
few times.
me.
What is a cottage hospital?
so so a cottage hospital, my mom was actually born in one. It's just a smaller, like a country hospital basically.
Oh,
They
okay.
would have
Okay, I
them
see.
as like smaller outposts for communities that couldn't get to a bigger one. Like they had them
Okay.
quite a bit in Newfoundland. I think it was originally started in Scotland as like the system, but this was operational until like not too long ago. Like there was, I think the last baby was born there in like 2001,
Oh,
and
wow.
since
Cool.
like it's this huge building in Norris Point on the west coast, like right in Grossmore National Park,
Oh,
and
yeah. Beautiful park.
it's so cool. The first time I went there, I played there because they have like a concert room,
Okay.
which is crazy. And then
Yeah.
they have like a hostel up above. They have like a community kitchen, community garden on the main floor, as well as like acupuncture and massage therapy
It's just an all-in-one.
available. There's a radio station in the basement. There's a daycare in the basement. There's a library and growing room there. Like it's insane. It's a crazy
Wow.
place. And I've done a bunch of writing residencies there since. Just they don't do it very often, but I'm just friends with the director, and we talk. And sometimes I go there to, I don't know, really dig into it.
Yeah, wow. That
Um,
sounds amazing.
yeah,
That's
it's
super
the
cool.
most beautiful place in the world.
Yeah, Grossmoen is stunning. It's a
Unreal.
beautiful park. That's the only
Yeah,
time I've been in Western Newfoundland. My wife's
cool.
family's from Newfoundland, so we've gone
Oh,
to
cool.
Central and St. John's a few times, but
Yeah,
we only made it out west, specifically to go to Grossmoen, but like I haven't
right.
spent much time on that side of the island.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's a big, lots of so many
It's a
places to see.
it's a much bigger island than most people think.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
remember like when we went there, I was like, okay, so wait, St. John's is 4 hours away from where we are right
yeah.
now. I was like, isn't
Like
that the
what?
whole island? What?
Yeah. In 2016, I did a tour where we like the ferry to Argentia wasn't going yet because it was like May. And
I don't
so
know
we
where that
were
one is
there's
either.
like there's the two ferries. There's the Argentia one, which is like super long, but then the Port Basque goes
Okay, yeah.
year round. And then we did like the drive across and we toured
Mm,
across and did like I think 7 or 8 days across the province.
yeah.
And it was not it was a substantial drive. It
Yeah.
was like
Yeah.
eight
Yeah.
and a
Yeah.
half hours to St. John's from
Yeah.
Port
Yeah.
Basque, which is wild.
Yeah. It's much bigger.
Yeah.
And but it's like it's just such a and I can't speak for the rest of the East Coast because I've only
Yeah.
spent like a day in Halifax beyond that. But like
Gotcha.
like it's such a different pace of living.
Yeah. Oh my
It's
God.
so interesting, like coming from like Toronto, the GTA, and like spending a week or two East Coast is like a totally different culture, vibe, everything about it.
Yeah, it kind of calls to me sometimes. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that'd be nice. Perhaps someday, not soon, but
Yeah.
it's on the
Yeah.
back burner.
Bringing it back to the record,
Yeah.
the big stylistic shift, right? On one
Mhm.
hand, I could see it being super liberating to be doing something so different. So, like, it must, like, as an artist, it just must, like, ignite something in you. But on the other hand,
Sure.
it must be so challenging,
Oh,
right? What can we
scary.
kind of like explore like that challenging side of it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, coming with these new sounds were how were we going to do this with the last show too,
Mm,
and so like this has brought on like a whole new exploration. Like I've gotten like I have my own like in-ear monitor system now, which is great, and from that like we've been experimenting with tracks over the last year and a half, starting with we kind of first started using them on this tour we did last year, where we first started playing like Tough Kid and Momentum, and we started playing like tracks here and there. My drummer Chris is just like a absolute genius with this kind of stuff. He's also a producer, and so it was very helpful. We just kind of like did some like basic ones just to like flesh things in and have those like, especially the even just the synth lines that are a little bit like they're syncopated in a way that makes them move things along. Like those were nice to just include tucked under here and there. So kind of just getting more comfortable with that and like making some transitions with gear and tech and stuff like that. And then like leading up to the release show, like I think this was the biggest production I've ever had for a music show
mm,
in my entire career, and there were so many moving pieces, and it was kind of theatrical, and we had moments like I was in the crowd a bunch. There were all these sculptures that my mom had made in the theme of death, like land art sculptures. There was some movement pieces. There was my friend like burst out of one of the land art eggs in the middle of the show, in the middle of the crowd, and started creating chaos with like glow sticks, and it was nuts. It was crazy, and that awakened something in me. That's something I want to do more. But it was kind of the culmination of just like kind of pushing, I don't know, pushing what it was that the live show could be, I guess, because it
yeah,
was, I remember being so scared at the outset of being like, how do I pull this off now? Like, and
yeah.
not only that, but like, because I didn't really hold back anything with the vocals, like, it's a very vocally challenging record. So it's like, okay, now to pull it off
Now,
vocally.
now
And
do it
yeah,
every night. Yeah.
exactly. And so I had to like definitely get like, I don't know, get back in shape for that.
Mm,
But like yeah, just having run through it, this last tour gave us a chance to do the entire record every single night. And like it felt so good. Even at the beginning, it felt good. It felt a little dangerous, if you will,
yeah.
because of that, like the stakes kind of feeling. But as we got more and more comfortable, just like all the little like magical moments crystallized, and it felt really good. So I think, yeah, overall, I think that has been the biggest challenge, because overall, I think I have a really nice fan base who are kind of down for it all. So I've kind of experienced like a very welcoming thing with this departure, which has been really great and
That's
relieving too. You
fantastic.
never know.
Yeah. I mean, like it's so interesting because I first saw you I don't even remember when this was, but you opened for Crownlands.
Oh, cool.
And like I was like, "Oh, cool. Like this is like a really interesting artist." And I went and listened to whatever your newest record was at the time, and it was a totally different vibe. And I was
Totally.
like I was down for it. It sounded awesome. It was a fantastic record, but I was like, this is not the same, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
already like I was immediately introduced to you with like such a range of versatility in your work.
Hmm. Yeah, no
Um
kidding.
and it was super cool, right? So I would
Cool.
assume that if you can go from like folk to rock to this, like I would assume that you have this audience that is just like there because of you, right? Of you as
Totally.
the performer, you as a songwriter. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's good. And I think, I used to be a really I used to shy away, or not be shy away. I would be self-conscious about how diverse my like catalog has
Mm,
been. And it's like, in my head being like, oh, can't you just pick a thing that you want to do? Or maybe you have to like streamline this so that it fits the specific niche. But I think that was the power, like the empowerment of this record too, was to just allow myself to stop holding on to it so hard and to stop forcing it into these boxes that weren't quite the right fit for, I just wanted to really express myself, no confines, and see what happened.
yeah,
And I think that was that. I mean, yeah, that was a great, could have gone, poorly. It was a risky thing to do maybe, but like I think in this day and age, like all, because there's so much noise, because there's so many artists making amazing music, like it's so hard to cut through. And so the only thing that you can do that nobody else can do better is like do your thing,
yeah,
whatever that is. So I
yeah,
think I just followed that. And in this day and age with like, with social media and the way that you're able to get out to people, I do think that people are buying into you as a songwriter, as a performer, as your like, your community and your team. Like they're all kind of buying into this thing, whatever that looks like, instead
hmm,
of the moment in time or the genre, because genre is also so fluid now. So
yeah,
I think it was a good risk, a good bet.
yeah, yeah. No, it definitely paid off for sure. It's a fantastic
Yeah.
record. I think, building off of what you were saying though, I think anyone that supports independent music in one way or another, whether it's
Hmm.
streaming or social media or going to shows, right? They are there for the person, right? And they're happy to
Yeah.
kind of like they are almost taking a risk because like how many
Yeah.
times do you go out to see a new artist and you don't know what it's going to be, you know? When you buy the ticket for the big show, you know what you're getting.
Totally.
When you roll up to the dive bar on a Friday night, you have no idea what it's going to be.
That's
Um,
right.
so I think like that is the audience that is more open to taking risk and also more open to
Hmm.
seeing the artists that they want to see take other risks as well, right? Because they're
Totally.
there for that almost.
Yeah. And I guess that's important to like lending your humanity to it all. It's like people do change and ebb and flow and
Hmm.
shift. And I think
Hmm.
your music can as well. And I think people can be there for that. I think it can be a beautiful thing
Yeah.
that it
Yeah.
shifts and changes. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Nothing
Yeah.
stagnant. Nothing
Yeah,
stagnant.
exactly. Exactly. And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I wrote down some songs that I think are like really central to the record.
Cool.
And maybe we could just talk about like the writing, the recording, any
Yeah.
like pretty much anything that you want to.
Love that.
Why don't we start with the opening track, Marrow?
Marrow. This is one of the ones I wrote amidst the ghosts in the cottage hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was when I started looking at like the process and the record theme as a whole, where I was like, okay, where am I at with this? And like I was a very neurotic little kid. Like I was very afraid of like the Black Death coming back when I was like 5 or 6. Like I was always like I couldn't sleep at night because I was like, Mom's gonna get in a car accident. But it's like, but she's at home. It's like, no, but I know. Like it was just like
Mm,
I was just
hmm.
always thinking about death for some reason. It was like a big the fear was very present for me all the time. And so I just kind of like looked at that a bit and was like, why? Because still to this day, I mean, like not I feel like a huge shift more recently, but even at the time I was like, well, what like let's look at that fear and
Mm,
see like the impacts that it has had and just like embody what it feels like to you in your body.
yeah.
So that's kind of what I wanted to convey with this initial one. And like what a starting point, um, that we're all coming into kind of this death experience with fear. Of course, fear is always going to be there. So acknowledging that. But the second song right in is the death of fear. And
Mm,
that's tough kids. So it kind of like it triggers the process
yeah.
from that point.
That's also the second song that I wanted to talk about. With Marrow,
Oh,
though,
perfect.
it's so interesting that you talk about the ghost hospital, right?
Yeah.
Because like it's such a haunting song. It's such a brave song to open a record with because it's so
Thank you.
stark. It feels like something that should be in the middle of the album just to be
Yeah.
safer, you know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah,
so much
totally.
space in the arrangement and the way the instrumentation like drops out at moments.
Yeah.
It's such a vulnerable song. It's the kind of song that like if you're starting an album with, you have to follow like a really weighty statement. Like
Totally. Yeah, I
it was such a bold move to put it in the opening
thank
of
you.
the
Oh my
album.
God. That means a lot because I did hem and haw about it because there's always that like, oh, like you better make the songs that you like the singles at the very front or else nobody's going to
Mm,
hear those or whatever. But I wanted to kind of have other reasons, other reasoning for my
yeah,
choices, I guess. And for me, it was like this, I wanted the project to be this cohesive whole and I wanted it to mean everything that it could.
yeah.
Um, and
There's a lot
so
of
this was
like
part of it.
business
Yeah.
and artistic practices that go into track listing, and it was so
Right.
cool to see you lean more onto the artistic side with that song.
It's why not? Like
Yeah.
it's like I felt it felt the best. So I think
Yeah.
I don't know. I
You're
stand
making
by
a
it.
record. You might as well be the creative route, right? You're in a
Exactly.
creative field, right?
Totally. And making an album these days at all, I think is like quite a decision in a
That's that's in
non-record
my notes.
culture, you know?
Absolutely. That's in
It's
my
like,
notes.
yeah, okay. So you know what's up. But like yeah,
Yeah. Tough kid.
yeah.
Yeah, you segued perfectly, and then I was like, no, 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 let's go back.
No, no, no,
Let's
which I
yeah.
appreciate. Tough Kid. Yeah. So this was the second one that I wrote with Hawk. Um, and I feel like this was my real like shedding of the fear of pursuing whatever this was. I don't think I realized that that's exactly what it was at the time. I was just kind of like drawing from these things I was feeling and this like newfound like sense of, I guess, confidence, but kind of like just wielding art and
Mm,
music in a way to just express instead of like quantify or like build business wise. Like I was kind of just like, well, what if I just like let my freak flag fly and just do whatever felt right. And so we started writing these songs, and this was part of that. Yeah, I think like that fear kind of like cracking open, like it was showing the cracks in what I had, like the fear that I had built around myself
mhm.
around making music, because there is so much fear and vulnerability, and like it's a huge emotional undertaking to release your work to the world. So I think it was it was come by honestly, like that fear, but at the end I just wanted to like shuck it.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah, it was a love letter to me. It was a love letter to anybody who would listen to it who felt as though they weren't able to be that true self, to like break through that fear, whether it's imposed by ourselves or someone else. It's there and we can always move to break through it and be our true selves. So that was what that was
Yeah,
about, that sentiment.
that's really thoughtful and really cool.
Mhm.
Um, what is real is the next one I've written down.
Yeah, this was a wild one. It's very strange. It's about, this one is like the death of reality, and it's about a recurring dream that my mom had when she was younger, when we were younger, that she told me about later on, and she felt as though like she kept having this dream every night. It would go back to the same world, and at a certain point, she stopped being able to tell which world was the dream world, which one was the real world, because she'd go back to sleep and it would be just like where she picked up, like as though she had gone to sleep and woke up to the life that she had on the flip side.
Oh.
And it was very confusing. And at one point, like she felt like she was given a decision between the two, like she had to make a choice
Mm.
between the two worlds. And of course, she chose ours, but she never had the dream again after that point. And so it was kind of like drawn from that story, but just the idea of like, we don't know what reality is, we don't know what's out there, we don't know how things work, and
Yeah,
to
this
just
simulation
revel in
is
that.
crazy.
It's exactly, the simulation is nuts. And honestly, like I've had my own like tribulations getting stuck in dreams and stuff. Like I can sleep forever sometimes, unfortunately, because of these dreams. Like they suck me in. And it's such a, yeah, what is real? What are dreams? What is this plane of existence? All those kind of questions came up, but it was a very like personal story that I always loved hearing and wondering about from my mom.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I hear stories like that, and I am simultaneously like thankful that I don't dream, but also almost envious that
Yeah.
like because that
Oh,
sounds like such an otherworldly experience, but at the same time,
totally.
like that's
At what
also okay.
cost?
Yeah, yeah. Like it's kind of like, you know what? It's kind of weird that you don't dream, but
But maybe
maybe there's a flip side to it.
silver lining.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not susceptible.
Let's talk about the title track. I
Yeah.
thought that was like a really clever way, the chorus referring to the act of living as a death cult.
Yeah.
It made
It
me think
was,
of there's this Queen of the Stone Age song. I can't remember what song it is off the top of my head, but something like life is hard, that's why no one survives.
oh my God, totally. Yes, I love that. But yeah, no, I mean it definitely I think it was born of just like not like the malaise, and like there's just like a lot of like anger and fear that I feel that I'm feeling around me, of just like the state of the world, and like
Mm,
how just like everything, from cost of living to like over inundation with like overstimulus all the time, to like seeing horrible like genocides and things going on right in front of us on our screens. Like it's just like absolutely, it feels so impossible sometimes. And
mm,
I've seen the burnout in myself. I've seen it in everybody I talk to. There's just got to be a breaking point where we can kind of like make this existence a bit nicer on ourselves, like it has to give at some point. So I think while that's all a very like kind of dismal um theme for the song, I think there is an aspect of like, well, we have to look out for each other, and we
hmm.
do, and we do in the end.
Absolutely, yeah.
Um, we're all in this death cult together, so we might
Yeah.
as well make it a little bit better,
all
make it a
all
little
bi
easier on
all
each other.
binded together by our commitment
Yeah,
to the cults.
exactly. Maybe we don't need to yell today.
I really like that song. Felt very generational, and I think
Cool.
I think you did this fantastic job of capturing this sense that particularly millennials
Mhm.
feel in this kind of collective experience that we're seeing with like, there was a time like like growing up and seeing the internet change and our
Yeah,
access to everything and the state of politics and social politics and cultural politics and everything around us.
yeah, big
Um,
time, big time.
it was a really the song itself resonated with me a lot. It was really cool. I liked it. I liked
Thank
it a lot.
you. That means a lot that it's that you said generational, because I do think it kind of was born of that as well, of just like this kind of like like waking up to like the distrust of everything we've been told that we were supposed to
Yeah.
have, like, and I
Yeah.
feel like that was also and still is weighing on people that I know and love, like of our generation, of lots of different generations. So it's like
Hmm.
definitely like that distrust of the promises that we were
Yeah.
told is such a like a rude awakening. And so it was kind of speaking to that as well, for sure.
Yeah.
Like it couldn't not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did you choose to name the album after the song?
Because so to me, death is so many things, but it's like it's change, it's cycles. The death of something is like the renewal of something else.
Hmm.
And to look at death and not, because I didn't want it to be a dismal record. I didn't want it to be like, I want it to have like some dark elements for sure,
Yeah.
but like I didn't want it to be like death, isn't it so haunting, you know what I mean, like that kind of thing. I wanted it to mean something. And so for me, yeah, death is it permeates life, it pushes life forward. And so what is death if not the act of living? It's kind of like
Hmm.
it's going to be here endlessly and constantly anyway, so we might as well get used to it. As so it is the act of living, and that's kind of what I wanted to convey.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I've got two more songs written down here, but feel free to add
Ooh,
any that you want.
cool.
Dead End, I thought was another really cool one.
Ooh, thank you. That was one of the ones that was ghosts as well, like in the ghosts
Okay.
cottage hospital. But yeah, it was like it almost didn't make the record because I made it and I was like, is this stupid? Like, can I do this? Can I make a song about like personifying the Reaper and have it just be like,
I thought that was so fantastic.
thanks. Oh yeah, I was just like, am I gonna get away with this? Is this like too weird? But I honestly, I think it's my favorite song to perform. Like maybe one of my favorite songs on the record. Like it just is very odd and strange, and like I wanted to have this kind of like ghoulish, like what's the term when you have like a legion, like an infernal legion of
Mm,
vocals. Like you should have seen the amount of vocal tracks on that thing. It was
yeah,
crazy. um but yeah, it was just like this kind of like just trudging, like the fatigue, the eternal fatigue with which the Reaper walked through this world was kind of like how I wanted to get like the just like the synths and the drum lines and everything moving
yeah,
in that way. So yeah,
yeah.
I'm really proud of that one.
I'm so glad that made the cut.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, that makes me curious because you worked with Huxley a lot, obviously.
Hmm.
How much material didn't make the record?
I would say I would say there were four-ish songs that were contenders that didn't quite make it.
Mm,
That fit with the theme, that maybe didn't quite fit with, I don't know, like you said, it's a very diverse record, but
hmm.
there is still something tying them all together. And
Yeah,
it was kind of, I just couldn't, neither Hawksley or I, or one of us couldn't detect it in the ones that weren't chosen. So it was kind of like, it made sense at the time. And I think those songs are still good for other purposes in the future. So
cool.
it's,
Yeah,
yeah, it was not forever goodbye,
yeah, yeah.
which is nice.
The last track that I had here actually closes the record. You don't still
Oh,
have a hold on me. It's
yeah.
so different from everything else. It's so folky. It made me
Yeah, it
think
is.
of Joni Mitchell.
Oh, cool.
Um,
Thank you. That's really nice.
what what uh I'm first and foremost before you get into this song, like it's so different
Hmm.
musically. Um, what made you want to end the album with this? Like if we're talking about
Yeah.
Marrow being such a statement opener,
Hmm.
this to me felt like a very conscious choice because it's so different to end the record with.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. It's almost like for me, I picture the record as having a false ending with the second last song. So with Before the Afterlife, that is this moment where like there's kind of like this peace found, like looking at death in like a way of like gratitude and like an emotionality and just moving through things regardless of whether they're beautiful or not.
Mm,
That was kind of where we got to with that, which seems like the intuitive way to end the record. But for me, I was kind of like, this is an ongoing thing and it's never finished. I didn't want to have, like, there is no destination with this, and there's always going to be
mm,
growth and there's always going to be change. Like, like I said, with there'll
yeah.
always be cycles, there'll always be change. And so this was kind of like the last thought. And this was the song that I mentioned earlier that I wrote as my anxiety meds were kicking in for the first time, where I wrote this breakup song to anxiety and depression. And it was just by myself on an acoustic guitar, kind of getting back to what it was I wanted to do in the first place. I didn't know. And so I was on this like moment of exploration in like a cabin in the woods on the West Coast all by myself. And I just kind of went inward and wrote the way I used to write on an acoustic.
Mm,
And then, put all of the big epic moments with the band on afterward. But to me, that intimacy, that look inward, that like acknowledgement of self, and like the promise to keep growing and learning going forward, with a bit of like there's a triumphant aspect to the song. Um, I think that was kind of the moment that I wanted to leave on the record. Like that felt like truly where I was at and like who I was going forward was that one. So
interesting. That's such
yeah.
a thematic way to close it. Like not with the
Yeah.
obvious thematic ending, as you said, but to look more at like almost the moral of
Yeah.
these songs, this body of work.
Yeah, totally, totally. And it's also something that I think, death is so completely universal. But so are, struggles with mental health and, anxieties, depressions,
Hmm.
like all these things
Hmm.
that we all go through, that I think is like it's so human. And while we are here, like let's talk about how we move through those things as well,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it felt very like powerful to me as well, like as me as a person, to put it at the end there as well. It was kind of like a statement of like, yeah, this is beautiful. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's so interesting to hear you discuss death as not only like the literal death, but like the death of particular cycles and the renewal that comes, and to have paired that with like an all new artistic cycle for your own music is like it's so interesting to hear you kind of to see those two elements mirror itself. And I don't know if that was necessarily intentional,
I,
but I think it's really cool to see those two parallels.
yeah, I think it wasn't, maybe it wasn't intentional from my end, but it
Hmm.
definitely was hand in hand. Like they
Yeah.
happened together in a way that was really cool. And I think that was the thing that I really embraced through this whole process is just the concept of change and ebb and flow. And like I read this book not too long before the process, the writing process. And one of the songs that didn't make it was actually about this book, but it was an Octavia Butler story called Parable of the Sower. And there's this, it's kind of like, it's post-apocalyptic, but like really like a little close for comfort, to be honest. And it's a sci-fi from the 80s.
I mean, I think a lot of post-apocalyptic is getting a little too
It's,
close for comfort. I think a
you're
lot
not
of that
wrong.
is
You're super
so
not
it's
wrong.
hard to differentiate the fiction from the documentaries.
Literally, absolutely true. Yeah. But in this book, there's this main character, and as a means of coping with the hellscape that is the world, she creates a new religion, and that religion worships change as God because it's the only thing that they can rely on. And it's
Mm,
like that, it is kind of it's a pillar, and it is something that is reliable. And so I think so often when you get in, like for me, I was just like so consumed with lots of things of like where I stand. I think post pandemic, a lot of people just went through a lot of things of like, who am I? What am I? Why am I
mm,
here? Kind of thing. And I think it's really important to embrace that change
yeah,
because things will always be ever changing and things will never stay the same. So I think that was something that I wanted to take with me as well through this of like being able to like, change a relationship and process like how you look at death, but also that even in the most vulnerable, like most difficult moments, like this too shall pass and ever forward will we all go.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know you said Dead End is one of your favorite songs, but do you have a favorite song on the record?
Ooh, I think I like that end. I like Momentum
That's
as
another
like
great
a
one.
it's a fun one.
Yeah.
And I really like Blood as well. That's a really fun one to
Yeah.
play. And I wrote it with my buddy, Jem, who goes by J3M on the internet. Yeah, and they're just incredible. So I shout out to those songs as well, Blood and Momentum.
Uh, let's talk about creating a full-length album, because that
Yeah.
that's already come up, and
Yeah.
that was like looking back at your. I know you said that now you have had an EP in the past,
Yes.
but you're five full-length albums in, and full-length albums for those listening are super expensive to make.
Yeah.
And not only that, like as an artist, like that's a lot of writing. It's
Hmm.
it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
And now we live in this age where all the value is placed on the single and
Yeah.
maybe an EP, especially if you're an independent artist.
Totally.
And here you are just refusing to do shorter plays, like you're making full length. I mean, you're still doing singles, of course, but like
Totally.
you're releasing a full length album, right?
Yeah.
Um, why do you insist on going the full length route?
You know what? I think there have been so many points where I've been like, okay, I'm going to do this single and this single, then we're going to do an EP and release it that way. Like starting with like my 2016 record where we were doing an EP and
Mm,
then like got some funding we were not expecting and then turned into a full length because of that. So I think like it's kind of been even in the moments where I maybe would have gone the EP route. It's just kind of like it keeps bringing me back. But I do like the album as a whole. I like it as a piece. For me, like I write really quickly usually, and I like writing a lot at a time. And so to like have this whole piece, even if, I do, struggle with that idea that maybe some songs aren't getting as much listenership or like, like the spotlight as much as the rest of the songs on the record because they're further down, therefore like less
Mm.
potentiality to be listened to. But like, I don't know. I do really like that album as a whole. Um, for whatever reason. And I've been lucky enough to be able to pull it off for this many times.
Yeah.
So,
And I
I
mean,
mean, like,
I'm sure you grew up just listening to albums too, right?
yeah, completely. That's
Like
totally it.
that's our generation. It's albums.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think too, like where my connections kind of are, like, I love the live setting and people love to like get the vinyl and like bring the live show kind of home with them and things like that.
Hmm.
So I think for me that's been an aspect as well as like, where I do want to like put out a record and then road dog it for a while and like bring it
Hmm.
to folks with, tokens that they can have with them that are kind of like I feel like vinyls and CDs are kind of like stocks in a way where like maybe people don't have a CD player, maybe people don't have a vinyl player, but they have the art and like the memento, but also they're like they're supporting you and getting a
Yeah.
memento in return,
Yeah.
like there's this like I support you at this stage that you're at
Yeah.
that I'm able to see you at. And I think that's a really beautiful like relationship transaction
For
type of
sure.
thing
Like
between,
I don't have a CD player anywhere.
yeah,
And I just
neither
bought a
do I.
CD. Yeah, I just bought a CD at a friend's show. I caught the Jailbirds at their album release show at
Awesome.
the Cave, and I was like, of course I'm gonna buy the CD.
Yep.
And like, I mean, I have a record player, but most vinyl sales, I think I read sometime last year or something like that, that they like it was a consumer report, and it was like
Yeah.
40% of people buying records don't have a record player. It was something like that. It
Wow.
was like I think it was an only American statistic, but like
Yeah.
there's a huge population of people buying records that aren't listening to them at all.
Yeah. That's a bonkers stat.
Which is like super interesting because that tells me that there is like a huge demographic of people that really want to support
Yeah.
music,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like get a record player, like
Yeah.
enjoy
Yeah.
it. You
Totally.
know what I mean? Like you could still support and enjoy
And
what you've bought.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. I know that, like, it's can be prohibitive and whatever, but it's also, yeah,
Mhm.
I think the art aspect makes it more like for me, like even if like in my times where I haven't had a record player, like having the tactile, like big old piece of art,
Yeah.
sometimes there's art you can pull out, you can open up,
Yeah.
whatever. Like I
The
think
liner
that
notes.
experience is pretty cool,
Yeah.
especially because you can access everything as far as listenership now. It's kind of like, no, but this is like straight from the source, like
Yeah. And I mean,
engagement.
like, music is art, and there's
Yeah,
something tangible about not being digital, right? I
for
think it
sure.
feels more like art when it
Yeah,
isn't just played on demand on your phone from Spotify or wherever you stream from.
totally. It feels like a piece of your life a little bit more, like as
Yeah.
a listener,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think.
yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so you've like I said, we've said this a lot, 5 full-length
Hmm.
albums. You've been writing full-length albums for like a decade now.
Yeah.
How has your approach to putting together a full length now compared to when you first started? How has that changed?
I mean, I think I've tried a lot of things. And so like I think no release has quite been the same, which is kind of a cool spot to be in because now I'm kind of at the stage where I'm like, post this record, like what do I want to do next? There's all these different like breadths of experience to pull from. Like where I like for the 2014 record, I self-funded. I did a Kickstarter and
Mm,
like that was just all mine 100%, versus like my last record was with Six Shooter on like a bigger indie label, whereas this one it's like it's very much like I'm doing this with my management slash label, Tiny Kingdom, and so we're kind of like putting it out indie together as a combo unit. But like yeah, there's been many different ways and like honestly largely seat of my pants, just like trying to like shoot from the hip, and do what I can at any given moment. Like not, I don't think I've had the luxury of thinking about anything too hard. Like I haven't had a second to like sit down, and I feel like now I'm able to like actually like take a beat and like make some
mm,
plans and things. But I
mhm.
feel like for so much of my career I was just like running from place to place and trying to hit the road and like working full time and like trying to get grants and like doing all these things and just having to kind of pivot on a dime. And I think
Hmm.
that brought me to a lot of different avenues and opened me up to a lot of different experiences. I think that was like definitely a cool way to be, of just kind of like seeing what the world's going to throw at you next. And I don't know, there's good and bad things about every single one of them. Like
Yeah.
I think there's
Yeah.
always going to be, I think that's part of the hard work, you know, like there's always things that you're going to have to like nose to the grindstone and figure out on the
Yeah.
fly. The only thing you can do is kind of trust yourself. And I think at this stage with all the releasing I've done, and it's the same thing that I feel with touring. Like I've self-managed tours for the last like 10 years with a full band, and like I it's not that I know exactly what to do in every given situation, but I trust myself to figure it out every time. And
That's
so
a
I
great way to
feel
be.
that
Yeah.
way about releasing as well, where I'm like, kind of whatever comes next or what comes in the future, like I'm kind of just open to drawing on the things that I've learned and continue to learn in the process, I
Hmm.
guess. So yeah, I don't know if it's a very vague answer of like, yeah, there's good and bad things, but but I think it's an interesting thing to kind of be like, I guess just trust whatever
Trust the
feels right.
process.
Trust the
Yeah.
process, man.
And
Yeah,
it's, I mean, I think you touched on a lot of really great, like being in that position where it's like, yeah, I don't know everything, but I trust myself to figure it out. That is such a valuable position to be in, right?
totally.
And I think when you're in a creative field like music, especially like music has always been changing, the industry has always been changing. But I think the last 15 years with like streaming and everything changing and social media
Yeah,
constantly like it is not a if you know like we're saying art is not stagnant, the industry is more not stagnant than ever before.
for sure.
And I don't think anyone has the answer as to what to do. I think it's just that
I don't think so.
you have to be in the position to trust yourself.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. It's the Wild West. So like do
yeah,
whatever it is that you need to do. But like
yeah.
I don't think there's any, I don't I don't think we can plan in the same way these days. I think we
No,
kind of have to
no.
take it all in stride in
It's
a
like you
fun
said,
way.
there's a lot of pivoting for sure.
Yeah,
There's a lot of pivoting.
yeah, absolutely. But I think, yeah, trusting yourself is a pretty sweet place to be and not
Yeah.
easily won, I
That's a
don't think.
fortunate position. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
It feels
really
good.
yeah, you have to earn that. You have to really earn that.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Not that I,
Uh
again, not that I know everything, but at all.
um you talked about it a little bit. You've worked fully independently. You've worked with Six Shooter Records, which is like a bigger Canadian indie label.
Yeah.
And right now you're working kind of independently, but also kind of with Tiny Kingdom.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of navigating the industry as like, because like
Mhm.
even when you're with Six Shooter, like you were an independent artist, right? Signed to an
Yeah.
independent label, independent artist.
Yeah.
Um, honestly, at this point, I don't know where this question's going.
Let's
uh,
shoot from the hip, baby.
yeah, yeah. I guess like how do you prefer to release your music in this ever shifting industry? How do you prefer to navigate being fully independent, working with other people in that if
Yeah,
that makes sense?
totally. It does. It does. And it's an ever ongoing question for sure, because you know it's always shifting. But I think like I used to do things very DIY. Like I was very doing all my own shit forever. Um, like, and I do think that there's an element of that I like, as far as putting things out, like, you know, with this record, just how personal everything was, like only I could figure out the social media that would make sense for this kind of thing. And like, you know, so it was very hands-on. And I think like that's the way that I prefer to do things, because I have also done, you know, done things where I've had like a social media manager who's like, hey, try this and this and this. It's just so helpful and wonderful. But I think how I operate is then I don't know how to put it into my voice. And it took, you know, it takes a while to figure out what your voice is, and is it even like tangible? Like, can you even
Mm,
describe it? I don't know that I can, but I think that pipeline of like trying to figure out how to make it interesting to other people just has to be honest. So for me, I think like there was a while with social media where I wanted to distance myself a little bit from it because I didn't want to give it my all. I didn't want to give it my entire substance or like spirit per se. Um, but now I've kind of like thrown that on its head where because it is such a connective tool, like it's a tool for reaching people that you wouldn't otherwise reach.
Mm,
It's huge, especially for independent artists. It's like a weapon, like a secret weapon
yeah.
for sure. So to tap into that is really important. But also like if you're doing this, like, this persona, this putting yourself online, it's kind of like, well, it makes everything easier if you are just giving it your whole self. If you're just like laying it down as like your actual self, because then everything's the answer to everything is just the honest what you would do. So it
Yeah.
becomes a lot less, it just becomes more simple, where it's like, well, what do I think about this? Does this video work? Yes, it does, because this is something that I would say on stage, or like this is something like, it just
Yeah.
becomes a little bit, it's never going to be standardized, so you kind of just have to like roll with the punches. And like I think coming from that place of honesty, even though it requires giving a little bit extra to an extent, I think it's easier. I just think it's kind of like in this day and age, that's how we can pivot so quickly, and like and just write and record, release, and like keep things moving in that way. Because also like your project is your project, and no one's going to care about it more so than yourself, no matter how
Absolutely.
hard you try. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
there is an element that I like I love my team, and I love having like the help to put together these things on the industry side that I don't know as much about. But like at the end of the day, I think having my hands on the reins is somewhere that I want to stay. And
Hmm.
that has proven to be like the most like the truest way that I can kind of get my music out there to people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's a very authentic record. It
thanks.
really comes through despite like there being that huge stylistic change.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's something hard to navigate and make it feel authentic, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because it's not the same you that you have presented in the past.
totally.
And now you're presenting this new cycle, like you're saying, like death brings these new cycles, and you
Yeah.
bring this new cycle, and you're trying to tell people that this is also me. And you've done
Yes.
such a fantastic job. Like it feels
Oh,
very
thank you.
authentic. It feels very organic. Despite the changes, it still felt like a Skye Wallace record.
Cool. That means so much. It's one thing to feel it, because I did feel that in the process, but to hear it from somebody who's now taking it and listening to it. And like thank you for the review as well. Like my God,
Oh yeah, of
that
course.
was
Of
awesome.
course.
Just like very thoughtful, and like so to have all this feedback in the post-release process has just kind of been like not overwhelming. It's been like filling my cup in a big way, because it's how I wanted people to interact with it, and
Yeah,
people have been really like doing so in a deep way that means a lot to me. So yeah, it's
that's
pretty cool.
great. That's great.
Yeah. Feel fortunate.
Um, what does 2025 hold? Where can people see you next? I know like
Yeah.
you just wrapped up a record, but like that's the question
Yes.
you have to when you're bringing this up to the end, right? Like
Yep.
what's next?
What's next? Exactly. Well, we've got a bunch of stuff coming up. We're doing like a festival in New York, called New Colossus Festival next year. That'll be really
Cool.
fun, going to the States. We do have a Toronto show coming up at the end of January. I can't say where, but I can say it's in a very well-known alternative venue. That's
Okay.
not typically a venue. So that will be announced soon in Toronto.
Cool.
And then and we're going up north for some stuff. Things aren't announced yet, but we're going to be doing some cool stuff up north, and hopefully on the west coast right after that. As well as, hitting Europe, hitting the festival circuit. We've got some fun plans. So I think a lot of on the road for
But
us, which
nothing
is fun.
nothing that could really be announced yet. So stay
Nothing
tuned.
announceable. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Follow me.
Um, before you go, the question that I like to close with, what are your three desert island records?
Mm. Um, Left and Leaving by the Weaker Thans.
Okay.
Um, oh, Reinventing Axl Rose Against Me.
That's a great one. Yeah.
And Oh, Randy Travis, always and forever.
Okay. Okay. I'm not too
that
familiar with the first one, so I'm gonna have to check that out.
that one, oh man, the Weaker Thans are my favorite band. They're from
Yeah.
Winnipeg and they're out of control. They're so good.
Cool.
They're like kind of punk rock adjacent, but like John K. Samson's lyricism is so like beautiful and literary and like yeah, it's something else. Very cool.
All right. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time, Skye, and once
Thank
again,
you.
congrats on the new record.
Thank you so much. Great questions. Thank you
Oh,
for
thank you.
just like being
Yeah, this
thoughtful
was
about this
this was a
kind of,
great time. Yeah.
yeah, hell yeah.
Thanks. Thank you for tuning into my conversation with Skye Wallace. You could listen to The Act of Living on all streaming platforms, along with physical options being made available on her website and at the merch table at all upcoming shows. Tune in next time for a deep dive on GNX, the surprise drop from Kendrick Lamar. If you're looking for the significance in this record, or if you're the least bit surprised that Drake is currently taking legal action against both Lamar and his own label, Universal Music Group, you can get caught up by listening to episode 24, where I broke down the Kendrick Lamar and Drake feud through a track by track, sometimes line for line analysis, and its place within the legacy of hip hop. I'm Jared Harris, and this is Beats by Jer.